right outside, so come on in, don't be shy. We've got ghosts and UFOs. Brace yourself, get ready for the show. Don't be afraid of the dark, the fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Oh, tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Have you heard tell of a demon next door? Or maybe a cryptid on the lake shore? There's nothing too strange for us here, so if you're ready, stamp out your fear. Don't be afraid of the dark, the fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Whoa, whoa.
Welcome back, campers, to episode 52 of the Scaredy Campfires. Tonight's tale begins the way all disturbing things do, with something small, something ordinary, something you almost overlook, until it starts behaving like it has a mind of its own. Sometimes the first sign isn't a scream or a shadow, but a quiet shift in the world that shouldn't be shifting at all. Tonight's story comes from Reddit user u/John518, who recalls a chilling childhood experience in a quiet family home, one where footsteps on the attic stairs echoed night after night, long after everyone had gone to bed. What began as a small, unsettling noise soon grew into a mystery that followed them for years. I live in a one-story house with my parents, my older brother, and, at the time, a dog. My room was in the first story right next to the stairs. My brother had the room on the attic. To get to the attic, he had to go through my room. There was no other way to get out or in the attic, so I always knew when he was home. My parents had the room next to mine, so again, I knew when they were there, especially because I would hear two doors open. I was about 8 or 10 years old when this started to happen. My grandma, who also lived in the house downstairs, died when I was 7, so we renovated the whole downstairs part. After everything was finished, one night I went to bed, and around 11 to 12 p.m. I started hearing footsteps going up the stairs. At the top of the stairs are two doors, one to my room and one to the living room. I heard something going up, waiting at the top for a few seconds, and then most of the time going back down. I was scared as shit. I thought it was a one-time thing and just slept it off, but next night it happened again, and again, and again. It kept going on for at least 1 to 2 years, I would say. One night, I took all my courage to open the door when the steps were around the middle of the stairs. I was laying in bed when I heard it. I got up, went to the door, and opened it. The moment my hand reached the doorknob, the steps stopped. I looked, and nothing was there. I started wondering what the hell it was. Couldn't be my brother, couldn't be my parents. I looked up both previously, so my last thought was my dog, who always stayed downstairs. However, we always locked the downstairs door because otherwise she would come upstairs at night, sometimes before. The last time it happened, I remember it being very, very fast step, like a dog would run upstairs. I never stood up so fast in my life and locked the door to my room. However, I didn't hear it going back down. I just waited and fell asleep at some point. I asked everyone if they ever heard or knew something about it, but no one knew anything. To this day, I don't know what it was. and it still doesn't make sense to me at all. Does anyone have an idea to what it could have been? Though the footsteps eventually stopped, the unanswered questions linger. Even now, the user is left wondering who or what climbed those stairs every night. Some mysteries fade with time, but others linger in the dark corners of memory, refusing to let go. Tonight's second story comes from Reddit user u/common oslot2939, who shares generations of chilling encounters tied to an old West Virginia farmhouse. From phantom voices to vanishing figures, their family's history with the property reveals a haunting that refused to fade with time. A few years ago, my dad told me that we were going to visit my grandmother in Virginia. She had been living there for quite a few years. I asked my dad if that's where he had grown up, and he said no. I asked where then, and he told me that he had grown up in an old former farmhouse in West Virginia. He told me that a few strange things had happened there, and his mother became convinced that the place was haunted. A recounting of the first story is typed below. It happened when my dad, who was only a kid then, and his mum were first moving into the house, and my grandmother's mum was coming over to help them move boxes into the attic. While my grandma was doing this, she was talking on the phone with her mum, and their cat ran up the stairs and into the attic. She shut the door and moved to leave the room when she heard coming from the attic, "Kitty, kitty, kitty, where do you go?" The sound came from the attic, but apparently my grandmother's mum heard the noise, heard it as if it were coming from the phone, and she asked her mother, "Did you hear that?" "I did," she responded. "Now you get out of that house right now, and I'll be over to pick you two up, and you can stay at my house tonight." And at that moment, the door to the attic opened and the cat came out, eyes wide and hair standing on end, yowling as it raced out of the house. It never came back. I did say that there were multiple ghostly happenings in the old farmhouse. My dad and his mum did not move out of the house after they heard the voice in the attic, which strangely could also be heard from the telephone. In the parlor of the house was a large oaken bookcase, bolted firmly to the wall. Displaced on the bookshelf were about a dozen fancy gold-lined plates. One afternoon, when my grandmother came home from the store, my father was at a friend's house. She found that the entire bookshelf had been ripped from the wall and was now lying mingled in the middle of the room. However, the gold-lined plates were now piled in a neat row on top of the counter. My dad said that ghosts often remove things that they do not like, or at least that's what the common theory is. My father is no believer in ghosts, but I am. Another thing about the house is that my dad said there was this discolored splotch on the kitchen floor in front of the sink. It was colored like blood apparently, and creaked when someone stepped on it. And the story was that after the family that had owned the farmhouse eventually sold it, and it for a time became a hotel. At one point, a rich Californian businessman came to the hotel to visit his sister, who was staying there, and a man, also staying at the hotel, shot and killed him, though I was never told why. I'm not saying the stained splotch was the guy's blood, but my dad said that sometimes at night when he was in bed, he could hear the sound of footsteps creaking over the stained area. I don't remember what had pushed my grandmother to move out of the house, but it was soon after she came home to find the bookshelf torn out of the wall that they began to make preparations to leave. Also, apparently she had heard people in the house on several occasions, and said that she had even seen what looked like a person slinking around the house at one night. One day my dad was helping his mother move things out of the house. She told him to move things out of the freezer in the kitchen. They had an old broken down deep freezer that they used as a storage place. So my dad began clearing it out, and when he opened the straw on the top of the freezer, he saw that there were cigarettes, lighters, and fancy embroidered plates that his mum liked to collect. They had been missing those things for a while. Like I said once before, ghosts often move objects that they do not like. You might expect that now that they had moved out of that creepy old farmhouse, the ghost stories would come to an end, but that's not how that worked out. Since when my dad and my grandmother moved out, they sold the house to my uncle James, who was in his early 60s at the time. For a time, it looked like all the spirits in the old farmhouse/hotel would leave Mr. James alone, but one night he was in his bedroom and he heard slow, plodding footsteps echoing up the hallway. Mr. James, who had been reclining in a chair and reading a book, looked up to see a man standing in the doorway to his bedroom. Their back was turned, apparently looking at a painting hung up on the hallway wall. "Hey!" yelled my uncle. "Who the hell are you?" The man turned around to face him. The man was short, with shaggy black hair and a goatee, sad blue eyes, and a blue jumpsuit overalls. Mr. James was only allowed a fleeting glance, however, since the man vanished. A few minutes later, my grandmother received a phone call saying, "Someone's in my house." Upon hearing that, she went to check on Uncle James, who, when they got to the farmhouse, was sitting on his bed shaking like a leaf, with a shotgun cradled in his arms, pointing it at the door. From then on, whenever they came to Uncle James's farmhouse, he would tell them crazy stories about being dragged from bed and into the hall by an invisible person and slapped, punched, and bit repeatedly. That would happen every night since the night when he first saw the man. No matter what he did, Mr. James could never stop the invisible man, and when it dragged him down the hall, it never went into the parlor for some reason. One day, my dad had to stay over at Uncle James's house. I believe he was 14 years old at the time. I don't know why, he never told me why. Now, Uncle James was a little cocky, but you can't really blame him, not with all he's gone through. He told my dad to sleep in the parlor, saying that it never came into the parlor. My dad didn't believe in ghosts, and he wanted to see this mysterious man for himself. Uncle James did not think that was a good idea. Though trying to see the man, he finally relented, telling him that he didn't mind as long as he promised to stay in the parlor. Mr. James also insisted that he sleep with the magic blanket, which was a regular quilted blanket that was supposed to keep him safe. My dad said okay, recognizing that agreeing might be easier than arguing. That night he stayed awake, hoping to see the man, although not falling asleep was hard to do, except when he saw the man at exactly midnight, like Uncle James told him. My dad said he felt the man before he saw it, if you know what I mean. The man didn't come into the parlor, like Uncle James said, and it just stood in the parlor doorway and stared at my father, and then it disappeared. When the grandfather clock in the parlor announced it was 6, the door to the Uncle James' bedroom squeaked open and footsteps creaked up the hallway to the parlor. My dad, thinking that it was the man, covered himself with the magic blanket. Mr. James appeared in the doorway and coughed. "Matt? Matt, is that you?" he asked. "Yeah," my dad responded. "I'm here." "Ah," said Uncle James softly. "I told you the magic blanket would work." "I think I saw the man," my dad said. "Did you?" Uncle James asked, rather distractedly. "And you know what? The man never came for me last night. Eventually, Mr. James died from a heart attack, I believe, not from anything unusual, and since Uncle James had no children, the farmhouse passed back to my grandmother, who wanted nothing more to do with the place. One day my grandmother was in her house when she happened to look up in time to see a short man in blue overalls and a black goatee walk up the driveway of the house. The man walked up the steps to the porch and paced back and forth on the porch. Then he stopped at the doorway of the house and disappeared. My dad said that my grandmother thinks the ghost was a family ghost, although I'm not sure what that means. I have a few other ghost stories concerning my family, or at least strange happenings, but since they have nothing to do with the old farmhouse or my Uncle James, I will end the story here. Though the farmhouse has changed hands and the years have marched on, the figure in blue overalls still seems bound to the place and to the family. For the user, these stories remain a haunting legacy, proof that some spirits don't just linger, they follow. That ends episode 52, campers. If anything familiar feels just a bit off tonight, let it be. Curiosity is how these stories start, not how they end. Until our next fire, stay curious, stay aware, and stay close.
As the night gets longer and the darkness creeps in, with the eerie silence broken only by whispering wind, come gather round the fire, the flickering flames, and hear the tales of the spooky and the strange. Chill up your back, a shiver up your spine. You'll be haunted by the things that you find. Legends will unfold and stories will be told at the Scaredy Campfire, for only